my brother because he got Crave TV. That means we can watch a few, not the stuff that's on HBO Max, but some of the stuff from HBO. So I can't watch the new Mortal Kombat movie or the new Snyder Cut of the Justice League movie on there, but I noticed yesterday that I can watch Game of Thrones and True Detective on there. So I'm watching
I need to get caught up.
Yeah, I'm watching the newer season of True Detective that I haven't watched, and I'm gonna catch up on the Game of Thrones seasons finally too. I believe I found that I'm pretty sure I'm on episode 3 of season 4, so I've got like half the series, so that's pretty good.
Okay, I'll tell you this: nothing trumps season 1 of True Detective.
Yeah,
Yeah, season 1's the best season.
yeah, I agree for sure. I love that.
Okay, so it looks like we're live. I guess right now we could just do a sound test of sorts. Make
Alrighty,
sure that we're coming in loud and clear.
all right. I will um I will open the YouTube page here to double check our audio. All right, here we go. You sure it's streaming? Maybe my computer's just a little slow.
Yeah, I'm looking on the YouTube webpage. It says we're live currently.
Okay,
We're live for about 1 minute 42 seconds.
okay. Let me check again.
And you look very ghostly today.
Yeah, all my movement is leaving afterglows. I'm actually just a simulation. I don't know if you knew that. You can tell I'm unpixelating.
Maybe you have magical powers.
That'd be pretty cool.
It's quite not so great use of the shimmer cloak there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm about halfway through it. I'm liking what I'm listening to so far.
In what,
So
sorry?
almost the Lightbringer, the last book.
Oh, yeah.
I'm working on it.
What's it called again? Burning White. Burning White.
Burning White, yeah.
Yeah.
Burning White.
Yeah, I think it's
Let's see.
interesting. I thought it was like there's so much going on in that book that I definitely missed some of the details, but I would say it's my favorite one in the series other than the first one.
Yeah, this last book is just like info bomb that they
Yeah,
drop on you, and like the world expands like ridiculously fast. That's like,
yeah,
Jesus, what's all this crazy stuff going on now?
yeah, exactly. Oh, okay,
It's
I see
almost like,
the, sorry, go
you
ahead.
see it? You
Yeah,
see
I see the stream here. Yeah,
all right, so yeah, I'm gonna just continue to talk so that you can check out the sound quality
all right.
and whatnot. I think I need to turn this fan off so that we don't get that sound in the background here.
All right.
Go ahead and do that now.
That's exactly the tagline I would have chosen for this movie too. What's in the box?
What's in the box? It's the best scene of the movie, man.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, man, I remember the first time I watched this movie. It's like, man, nobody catches a break here.
yeah, yeah. Such an unexpected.
Yeah, super twist ending.
Yeah.
All right,
Okay.
were you able to check any of that audio out?
I'm gonna do that right now.
Okay. Caffeine. Tasty.
All right. Yeah, it's funny hearing two of your voices at once. Yeah, the
You
audio
heard
is good.
too?
Yeah, I was because I was hearing your real time voice and also listening to the audio to make sure it works on deluxe.
Okay,
Yeah, it
so
works.
all right, we're good.
Yeah.
Great. Now that we confirm that the audio is good, let's get into it. So we're gonna come together to talk about Seven. So one of the questions I have for you, Andrew, were you having trouble finding the stream because you didn't spell the movie right?
No, I just went to your channel.
Because I remember you said that you're having problems finding Seven to
Oh,
watch.
yeah. Oh, I've been that website that we use for like streaming movies I've had trouble with it a few times recently. But
So the
yeah,
link I sent you, did it work?
yeah, that worked.
Okay.
Now what I've done too also is like I just bookmarked that page of the one that you sent it to me, and then I used that to stream another movie recently that worked. I watched Doctor Sleep recently, which is a sequel to The Shining, which I thought was really cool on there.
Oh, oh, I didn't know there was a sequel.
Yeah,
It's
there's
called.
just recently came out a few years ago, and it's also based on a Stephen King book. He just wrote a sequel to it a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, another question I have for you is what city do you think Seven takes place in?
I don't know. Do they say it at any point? I know like the city itself, it almost seems like a character in the movie. It kind of seems like maybe it's meant to be Chicago or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that was my guess, but the thing that throws me off about the setting is the final scene of the movie, because that final scene definitely looks like California to me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There aren't any like giant fields like that anywhere around cities like Chicago.
In the Midwest, I'm not sure what type of environment surrounds Chicago. I know for damn sure you're not going to find anything like that around New York, because New York is just all forested areas, like outside of the cities.
Okay.
But the movie was actually filmed in Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they never tell you the city itself where it takes place. But I would definitely say yes, the city is a character. You kind of get that uh, that clue right away when you hear like the hustle and bustle of the city. Because when I was watching it, I was like, huh, is there something wrong with the audio here? Did somebody record like a bunch of crap while they're trying to record this movie? And no, it's just the city is very noisy, so there's just noises all over the place. And then once we get to a scene where, and this is right in the very beginning of the movie, there's a scene right in the beginning of the movie where Somerset is is kind of just pacing in his room and he's trying to relax and he turns on a metronome and that kind of calms the city and he kind of the sounds of the city just slowly phase out and you only hear the metronome.
Right.
But that happens just right before the opening credits, right? But before we get there, I know this is like it's a crime scene right away, very first scene, and it's described as a crime of passion. And I know one of Morgan Freeman's lines is, "Look at all that passion on the wall," and it's basically like a bunch of blood
Yeah.
is splattered. One of the things I'll say about this movie is, man, are all of these murder scenes super dark and dingy? I
Yeah.
think the exception would be the office of the district attorney or defense attorney
Yeah.
and the woman who got her face cut up.
Yeah.
But everywhere else is just truly grimy and disgusting. Like even
Yeah.
the antagonist's apartment is just super grimy and disgusting looking.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
they really fully embrace that like film noir atmosphere, like almost to a like an unrealistic degree at times if you think about it. Like when they're investigating that first murder of that giant fat guy, like it seems like there are practically no lights in his apartment and they're having to use flashlights everywhere.
yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, just getting right into it. So that first murder was that they said it was a crime of passion, and he we get the Mills first comes up, and he's kind of the rookie. He gets on the scene, and Somerset basically instructs him, "Hey, I'm going to take the lead here, and you take a back seat." So they basically just come over the scene, and we just kind of meet the characters for the first time. You have this old grizzled veteran who's basically retiring soon, and this rookie detective who just wants to jump into things.
Hmm.
And we do see, like in the very beginning in the movie, they're often at odds with each other. You know,
Right.
uh, so
Another little interesting thing that I noticed this time that I never really thought about before is that this is a David Fincher film. He directed it, and I had in my head for some reason that Brad Pitt's um, first David Fincher film was Fight Club. But then I remembered noticed when I was watching this movie that this came out in 1995 and Fight Club came out in 1999. So he actually worked with David Fincher on this film before Fight Club.
yeah, so actually, David Fincher and Brad Pitt actually have a pretty good relationship.
Okay.
So one of the fun facts about this movie is that Hollywood execs were very unhappy with the ending of this movie. Um,
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah,
Not a happy ending
and
at all.
and they wanted to change it, and both Fincher, Pitt, as well as Morgan Freeman said, "If you guys change the end of this movie, we're walking out."
Oh wow, good for them.
Yeah, so all three
That
of
would have
them.
been like that ending would have been ruined. That's like one of the best parts of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really glad that they stuck to their guns and they backed up Fincher for keeping the ending the way it was.
Yeah. Well, like we were talking when we first started this about how iconic of a moment that ending of the movie is. Like people who haven't even seen the movie have probably heard that line before.
What's in the box?
Yeah, exactly. What's
so
in
uh,
the box?
so yeah, we get to the next scene where they kind of establish Miller as a character. So it's Miller is in his bedroom and he's spooning with his wife, and they talk about like how everything's different, and we kind of get the established setting that Miller is from like a rural area because his wife mentions that the city is noisy, and she mentions we moved here to get away from the tractor pulls. So it
Right.
kind of gives us a sense that their former um, home was maybe in a rural area,
Hmm.
and then they're not used to the city at all.
And this is part of how like especially more when I forget their characters, Somerset, Brad Pitt characters, and Morgan Freeman's character's name. Somerset and what's the
Brett
other name?
Mills
Mills. Yeah, yeah,
does.
Somerset
Mhm.
and Mills at the beginning where like the Morgan Freeman he's hesitant about Brad Pitt's ability, and Brad Pitt's character is all like young and full of vim and vigor and eager to prove himself, and he doesn't like he's always talking about how he worked homicide for 5 years and he wants to get on these big cases and like not have people underestimate him, but he's also like overconfident in some ways too.
Yeah, and this case is definitely not your run-of-the-mill case either. And Somerset kind of senses something going on here, and he doesn't think that Mills is ready for what's in stake for them here. So we know they get to ready for. Uh-oh, I'm hearing myself. That's weird.
Sorry, I accidentally unmuted the stream there for a sec.
Oh, no problem. Um, so the next thing that happens is the next crime scene evolves, and both Somerset and Mills are on the scene. Mills makes like a friendly gesture to Somerset by giving him coffee. It's like, oh, you want some coffee? And Somerset straight up just says no.
Doesn't he like does he even say anything? I thought he maybe just ignored it.
No, he just really briefly says no.
Oh, okay.
Um, and then he just puts the coffee like on a wall or something on the top of a wall.
Oh yeah. I'm thinking of a different time. A different time when he offers him coffee, he kind of like shrugs it off, and then he hands it to this random cop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's another part where, yeah. So so the case that they're at, the murder scene, a cop describes the scene as a man sitting face first in a plate of spaghetti. And Somerset, well, first Mills has a conversation with the cop. And the cop is like a city cop, and he kind of is not liking the way that he's being talked down to by Mills.
Mm-hmm.
So they butt heads a little bit, and then after they finish their conversation, as I know, Mills was asking the cop why he didn't perform a certain procedure to see if the man was alive.
Right.
And the cop was like, well, he's been sitting in a face full of spaghetti for 45 minutes. The only thing in his lungs is spaghetti sauce, you know. Somerset kind of questions that interaction that he had with the cop. And in my head, I think he's chalking it up to the inexperience of dealing with people. Like, it seems that Somerset has a better rapport with his coworkers, and Mills' rapport with his coworkers is pretty bad.
Yeah, pretty antagonistic at times too.
Mm-hmm. So they enter the apartment. There's just like a bunch of vermin crawling on the floor, and we are met with a giant, super fat man with hands and feet bound. And then we see that Somerset he really concentrates on the work and moves around the crime scene really meticulously, looking at clues and trying to discern some things. And it seems like Mill's kind of out of sorts. He's just kind of muttering to himself,
Mm-hmm.
like the entire time that they're inside this dingy, nasty-looking apartment.
Yeah.
With the fat guy just sitting at a table, with his face in his food. I know Mills tries to search around and stuff, and he finds like a bucket full of vomit and almost gags himself. Yeah, eventually, Somerset tells Mills to leave the crime scene to go help like the street cops interview witnesses. And of course, Mills is not happy about that. Next scene, they have like a little conversation in the car. and Mills makes his objection to the way he was treated and that he wants to be kept in the loop and that he's like the little tasks that he's making him perform are all things he did when he was like a beat cop.
Yeah, he's not some rookie beat cop anymore.
Yeah. And I know he asked Somerset, hey, have you seen my files? And Somerset's like, nope. Yeah.
You know how experienced I am, right? Nope.
It's funny because just thinking of that interaction, if somebody is experienced in the position, they don't need to know on paper someone else's experience to evaluate them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So you can walk into a room, say I have like 20 years of experience of something, and this fresh kid comes in the room. I don't need to read his resume to assess. I could just observe how he operates, and that'll give me a pretty good idea of how he operates.
Yeah.
So next stop, they go to the morgue, and they discuss the fat man scene, and they learn a couple more things because they weren't exactly sure if this was a murder or not.
Right.
So there are some things that the coroner points out to them that the man's stomach had burst. And at first, the medical examiner says, well, yes, his stomach burst, but that may not be the thing that actually killed him. So they further examined the body and they found some bruises that would indicate that he was being held at gunpoint. And the coroner then begins to explain that the man didn't burst simply from overeating. It's because he was kicked. And then that caused his stomach to burst.
Right.
So the next thing that happens is Mills and Somerset go to the boss man, who's Arlie Ermy. He's most famous roles from Full Metal Jacket as the
Right.
drill sergeant.
Right.
But in this movie, he
That's
also
where I
plays.
recognized him from. I knew I recognized him from something.
He always plays like cop or military roles. So in this case, he's
Yeah.
a police captain of some sort.
Yeah. He's always the obligatory tough guy authoritarian figure.
Yeah. So in this instance, he's not a hard ass. He seems very attentive to Somerset, at least.
Yeah.
And he kind of blows off Mills most of the time. But in this case, they talk about this case, and Somerset has a inkling, or at least a feeling, that there's some more to this than meets the eye.
Yeah.
That it's not simply just a simple case here, that there's going to be something else going on and possibly more happening. And that's when he suggests to the boss man that he wants to be reassigned. He doesn't want this to be his last case.
Yeah.
Because he knows that it's going to end horribly.
Yeah.
And he also mentions to the boss man he also wants Mills to be reassigned, stating that it's too soon for him. Mills then starts to plead his case, and the boss man just tells him to shut up. Boss man tries to convince Somerset, hey, you're like the only person that could work on a case like this. So he gets pondering about it. But one thing I do like about this movie is that it's a 2-hour movie, but the pacing just seems perfect. I don't know what you thought about this movie.
Yeah, it's really fast paced. I
Yeah,
mean,
because we're already gonna.
all that last stuff, the last stuff, in my second time watching it this time, I thought I would have liked it. I would have liked it more if it were even longer. Like if they spent more time um, interviewing Kevin Spacey's character when they're talking to him, and they gradually reveal more and more of his diabolical plan and like how he's going to supposedly take them to the more dead bodies and that kind of thing.
Oh yes, I call the last like 20 minutes of the movie the philosophy section.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
Moral philosophy. That's
yeah,
they do dive into that. Oh, so right in the next scene, we're already jumping into the next murder scene here. Um, it starts off, we see a press conference, and they're kind of announcing the death or murder of a defense attorney. Um, and we see that Mills is put on this particular case. And right away, we see that Mills is kind of a dick because he orders like the other cops to get him a coffee.
hmm
So he's already like abusing his power.
yeah,
So next thing, the DA announces, "Oh, we have the best working on the case." It almost feels like Mills kind of seems out of his league here,
yeah,
and this is an extremely high-profile case, right? It's a high-profile defense attorney that's murdered, and you put the rookie on it.
right,
Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah,
So, as they pull out of the scene, we do see that greed is written on the floor, right? In blood.
yeah.
And then there's like some photo of a woman and her eyes are circled in blood.
That's the first that's the first word that they see of the seven deadly sins.
Yes.
Okay.
At this point, they still don't know that this is a serial murder case. They have not figured this out yet. So,
Okay.
well, the next thing that happens is the captain tells Somerset that Mills is heading the investigation. Um, he also thinks that Somerset really isn't leaving. He thinks that his life basically is all about doing this work. And it's an interesting thing, this theme of his retirement. It's kind of a reoccurring theme. But um, they receive a phone call, and the phone call is that they found some plastic in the fat man's stomach. So this actually goes into the next scene where it sparks another investigation of the crime scene. So,
That's when they find that's when they find the word that's the second of the deadly sins on that piece of paper.
well, what they find, so he finds the plastic was some scrapings from the front of the fridge. He moves the fridge, and behind the fridge, gluttony is written in grease on the
Right,
wall.
right, right,
And there's also a note pinned to the wall as well.
right.
In this dark, nasty looking apartment. All the apartments are dark and nasty looking for the most part.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's when they put two and two together. And now this is a serial murder case. So the very first connection that Summers makes is Milton's Paradise Lost, which is probably something I need to read one of these days. Are you familiar with it? Uh-oh. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Did we lose connection?
Sorry, I forgot I had myself muted.
Oh, I was asking if you're
Yeah.
familiar with Milton's Paradise Lost.
Yeah, I read it. I read it once, at least a few years ago. I thought it was pretty boring, to be honest. Like it's a whole it's a whole bunch of like these angels do stuff and God is awesome and let's all talk about angels and God and stuff. And it was relatively interesting because it's about like it's kind of centrally about a religious holy war and that kind of thing. But it is a really important seminal text in Christianity, and some of the ideas that people associate with Christianity come from that and aren't even in the Bible or are in the Bible to a much lesser extent. Like I think one example is this idea of Satan being a fallen angel and that he used to be God's right hand man and that kind of stuff.
So that isn't based on the Bible? That's based off of something Paradise Lost?
If I remember correctly, I don't remember for sure whether it's something that's entirely comes from Paradise Lost. I think it's either that or I think it might actually be the case that it's kind of like glossed over in the Bible, but it's much more fleshed out in Paradise Lost, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Another book I don't know if you're familiar with because I haven't read it either. It's more of a, I guess, a poem or epic poem is Dante's Inferno.
I haven't read that yet. No, I've got some copies of Dante works, but I haven't gotten to those yet. No.
Okay. But that's another one they point out is Canterbury Tales.
Yeah, I've read that one.
Yeah, I read that in high school. So, Somerset figures that there are 7 deadly sins, so that means there's 5 more murders coming.
Right.
At this point, Somerset is definitely leaving this case, so he does. He's like, nope, I am not doing this.
Yeah, because he wants to not have his last case be this elaborate serial killer case that'll drag on forever, potentially years, right?
Yes. So, even though he does retire from this case, he continues to do some research. So he ends up going into the library.
Yeah.
Where he gathers a few of his books. And we could see that Summers seems to be a well-read person.
Yeah.
Because he already knew where these concepts came from.
Yeah.
So it looks like he went and took a look at the material and took some notes and basically gathered some information to share with Mills.
That's kind of like a dated thing that doesn't happen anymore, at least anywhere near to the extent it's spent in today's world due to the prevalence.
Oh, yeah.
Right? People don't go to libraries to go on research trips.
Yeah, so this movie was 95, right? So the internet was quite primitive at that point in history. Yeah. So you couldn't just simply go to Wikipedia. Back in 95, you actually had to go to libraries and shit.
Yeah. Yeah, like you could just Google 7 Deadly Sins, Paradise Lost, Canterbury Tales, probably get a good enough gloss over to understand what's going on in the case. Mm-hmm. Basically just do the internet form of what Mills does and get someone to get him some Cole's notes.
Yeah, so So yeah, there's a little bit of montage of him grabbing books in the library to classical music,
Yeah,
and it's cut with Mills staring at crime scene photos,
yeah,
just looking through the pictures from the different crime scenes. So eventually, Somerset makes a book list for Mills and um, sends it off to Mills. Next scene, we see Mills. I think a cop drops off a book for Mills, and he's
is that
basically,
when is that when he gives them the cop gives him those Cole's notes about Canterbury Tales and or Paradise Lost?
yeah, because it seems that Mills doesn't grasp the original material.
Yeah,
He gets super frustrated and attacks the book.
yeah.
So he doesn't get it, and then a cop drops off like various Cliff Note booklets from the different books that were on the list.
Right.
So, um, so next scene we have Somerset packing up in his office, and Mills comes along, and while they're in there, Mills quietly attempts to hide the Cliff Notes in the desk drawer so that Somerset doesn't see them.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Um, and while that happens, the phone rings, and Somerset, well, it's like your office now. And Somerset or Mills answers the phone, has a conversation, and it's his wife on the phone. And he's like, he hands the phone to Somerset. It's like, oh, wants to talk to you. And um, at first, we see that Somerset is reluctant to accept the invitation, but he does. Because I know he says, well, if that's the case, I'll be happy to go. I know at first he tries to make an excuse. And then he hangs up the phone and goes back to whatever he's doing. And then Mills is like, well, what happened? Like, oh, yeah, I'm invited to dinner at your house.
Yeah, and
Like,
his wife doesn't even tell him that beforehand.
no, no, not at all. So he's kind of like blindsided by it. So next scene, they go and they're meeting at the Miller or the Mills residence, and we get to meet Tracy, who is Mills' wife.
Played by Gwyneth
She's
Paltrow.
yes,
Long
and
before she started selling vagina-scented candles.
yeah, this is before she went cray cray,
Yeah,
pre cray cray era.
yeah.
So Mills goes to have some time with his kids while they talk. Um, and his kids are dogs.
Yeah. They're dog parents.
Yeah, so
That's so,
Tracy,
that's so annoying. That's this is kind of a tangent, but the that always annoys me when I see on dating apps chicks who say proud dog mom. I'm like, you're not a parent. They're pets.
yeah, they're pets. Well, some people are like children, but
Yeah.
um, yes. So Tracy, very charismatic. Um, she explains to Somerset because they're getting ready that they're taking jackets off and stuff. And then she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm still not used to the guns."
Yeah.
So she's not used to the gun carrying. Um, and they have an interesting conversation at the dinner table. One of the things that they start going in on is that Somerset has never been married. And he
Right.
kind of talks a little bit about that, but it never came to be. What was it that had something to do with him taking the job, right?
I don't remember. The only details I remember hearing from him are that he was engaged and close to married once, but it didn't end up happening. I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He talks he
It goes into
what was
more
this?
detail later about
Yeah,
that relationship.
he goes into more detail with Tracy later on when she wants to see him at that restaurant, right?
Yeah, I think at this point he just explains that it just never worked out for him.
Yeah.
But shortly after that, the whole entire apartment starts to shake. Um, Somerset says, "Soothing, relaxing, vibrating home," and like 3 seconds later, he just like busts up laughing, like cracks up very vigorously
Yeah.
because he has like a straight face, and he's like, "Ah ha ha ha!" Like seconds later, I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Well, we got this. Yeah. And then they explain, yeah, we got this apartment.
Yeah, Brad
Why
Pitt is
the
just
real
kind of
why
really
the
mad about
agent
it.
would only show it to us for 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah, they basically got screwed, right? So, um,
Yeah.
after things wind down with dinner, they start going out. They start going over the case, and um, they start to focus on the lawyer that was killed. So they look at some of the photos, and one of the themes going on in that murder was a pound of flesh.
Right.
And do you remember which body part that he cut off?
Was it his stomach?
I think they said it was like his love handle that they chopped off.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like
So,
something like a pound of fat, right?
yeah, like a pound of flesh. Like they were trying to think of what would be the least missed body part that you could think of chopping off.
Right.
And I think one of them's like, oh, I guess the love handle maybe, and then they show the picture, and his side is like all bloody.
Right.
Um, so one of the things that they mention is that there are no fingerprints and there are no witnesses.
Right.
And they found out that the picture is Gould's wife, so the name of the attorney that was killed is Gould. And their next lead is to go question her.
Right.
So they show up at her apartment. She's a bit out of sorts. And the one thing I forgot to mention is it seems that Somerset is back on the case now.
Yeah.
Uh, and this is just kind of one of the themes. He's getting drawn back in,
Yeah.
right?
Every time I get back out, they want to pull me back in.
So I think the thing that drew him back in was the dinner party because they go over the case after the dinner, and then that's when he gets kind of excited about it again.
Yeah. It's interesting too that Tracy just accepts the nature of being a workaholic when you're a detective, and they just don't even seem to discuss unless it's off screen that after dinner they just go right to work and then basically just work all night.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. And I know just from because it doesn't really show you how much of a workaholic a detective is, but it's basically like a 24-hour job. Like you can be called at any time for anything. But
Yeah.
well, they're at Gould's wife's house. Like she's hysterical. She doesn't want to answer questions. Mills just wants her to look at a couple photos, and she does notice that in one of the photos the painting is upside down.
Right.
So of course they go back to the scene to investigate this painting, and they are cutting it up, and they're not really finding much. And Somerset's like, let me go check this wall out here, and he starts dusting for things, and he finds some fingerprints. And it looks like, I don't know how it was written, but it said "help me" on the wall.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So one of the things that they do is they gather these prints and they try to get them forensically analyzed. However, it takes 3 days for this process to finish. So they're just waiting out on the couch, it seems, for this database to find a match, right?
Right.
So they're like sleeping on the little couch there, and the captain wakes them up and tells them, "Hey, there's a match here."
Right.
And
I wonder if that's something that happens more quickly in like police stations now too, also due to the internet, like we were talking about.
it's probably much quicker. I don't think it'd
Yeah.
take 3 days to find a match.
Yeah.
So they kind of, I guess, Somerset and Mills don't quite believe that the person that matches these fingerprints is the killer. But they follow that lead anyway. So they have a SWAT team approach this person's address, and they have a little bit of a conversation about pulling a trigger, and they're on their way to the scene. Somerset admits that he has never fired his weapon. He's drawn his weapon, but he's never fired it. Mills, however, admits that he has fired his weapon, and they explain it a little vaguely, but he killed somebody, right? If I'm
Yeah,
not
it seems that.
mistaken.
Yeah, it sounds that way.
Yeah, because he is kind of describing it, but it wasn't clear if the person that died was a victim of the person that they were chasing, or if Mills himself had killed this person. Because I know his partner was shot and spun around like a top. I don't know if he was explaining that his partner died or the guy, because they said they were trading shots with somebody.
Yeah, I don't remember the. It didn't seem like they gave that much details about that.
Yeah, they made it a little vague, so I don't know if it's the partner that died or if it was like the person that they were pursuing that died.
Right.
It's not clear, not too clear. So eventually they show up at the apartment with the SWAT team there, and they break down the door. They go through another disgusting apartment, and they find a man that basically looks like he's been dead for like a year on a bed.
Right. Yeah.
And and then after closer inspection, the man does a jump scare and he's alive.
Yeah.
Um, I was like, holy shit, it's like a real zombie.
Yeah. I mean, he looks dead as fuck, right? That's a good description. Yeah, he does look like a zombie.
Yeah, like he has zombie eyes. The guy looks rotten. I couldn't tell you how the guy could be alive still, but he was. So they cart the man out, and while Somerset and Mills are securing the crime scene, some photographer shows up and starts snapping pictures. And he's like, "Oh, I got a right to be here." Has like some New Yorkish type of accent, and Mills just tells the guy to get the fuck out of there.
And
He's pretty,
if you've seen the movie before, you should pay a lot of attention to that photographer.
yeah, for sure. And so they end up going to the hospital to check up on the zombie man. Um, and they want to check the possibility of extracting information from him. They talked to the doctor that was working on him. Well, that's not going to be any case here. His brain is mush, and he bit his tongue off a long time ago.
Right.
So they're kind of like at another dead end here.
Yeah. That must have been why, well, since we find out that the serial killer has like more knowledge of what's going on and is kind of like manipulating events, that he didn't care if they found this guy alive.
Yeah. So they figure, they know they're being played with, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
So we got another little scene here. Somerset receives a call from Tracy. And Tracy asks to meet somewhere. And Somerset's like, well, what is this? It's like, well, you're the only person I know in the city and I need to talk to somebody. So he
Right.
agrees. And they end up going to a diner. And she vents. One of her vents is about how she hates the city.
Right.
And that she's looking for a teacher job, but all of the schools are crappy as hell.
Yeah.
And lastly, that she's pregnant. And they have a little bit of a conversation about the pregnancy. First, Somerset describes a situation where he had impregnated somebody, and he urged the mother of the child to not go through with the pregnancy.
Yeah. And I
And
like the way he sums that up at the end. That it's something like he knows that he made the right decision, but he's always regretted it.
yes, and then he talks to Tracy about the decision before her, and he says, if you do decide to not have the baby, make sure you never tell Mills. But if you do have
Right.
the baby, make sure you spoil the kid, as much as possible.
Yeah, and it's like the way he says that, because he's Morgan Freeman and knows how to deliver lines, that almost made me cry, just like it made Gwyneth Paltrow's character cry in that scene.
Yeah, it was a very, very powerful delivered, because it kind of tells you that in the back of the character's mind of Somerset, that he would have had a family, because he doesn't have a family. He's solo, and he's kind of past that point in his life where he could start a family. And he sees in her what he could have had, and he would
Yeah.
have made different decisions knowing how his life would have ended up. Oh, powerful stuff, man. Okay,
Yep.
So one of the things that happens next, Somerset and Mills get into a conversation. Mills calls the killer a lunatic, and Somerset says, don't call him a lunatic, as he doesn't necessarily think that he's crazy. And David, David Mills is his name. Mills thinks the killer's probably in his grandma's panties, smearing peanut butter all over
Yeah,
himself.
yeah. I like that because it's interesting that because it's like Morgan Freeman's the Somerset's experience as a detective helps him understand that a serial killer like this is probably actually like really sophisticated and intelligent, and it's this idea of respecting your enemy, and Mills just has this stereotype of him being some like crazy guy wearing his grandma's panties or and something like that, right?
Yes. And one of the things that Mills responds with is just because the fucker has a library card doesn't make him Yoda.
Yeah, that's a good line.
So, so this gives Somerset an idea. Um, they head over to the diner and they're waiting for somebody. And the shady character rolls up and it's like, oh, I didn't know this was going to be a menage a trois. And the shady guy, well, before then, Somerset asks Mills, hey, do you got any cash? And he hands him some cash. And then they hand the shady guy some cash, like under the table, like they're making some shady deal.
Yeah, I like that too
Yeah.
because it kind of relates back to how Somerset has more of an appreciation of how to deal with people and kind of more experience of how the jobs work. So he'll do like illegal things or morally gray things to get the desired result. But then we see later on when they're chasing the serial killer before we know who he is, and Somerset is hesitant to break into his apartment. We know that he'll do some like illegal or morally gray things, but there are lines that he won't cross.
Yeah.
So
And
he's
we'll,
not
we'll
like
get,
a dirty cop, so to speak.
yeah, he uses information to get somewhere, but he won't necessarily break the law to do it. Because I know technically he's not the one breaking the law when he's paying off the FBI agent. He's just, hey, get me some info, you know. So, so they wait around, and before the info is given to them, he explains, yeah, this is an FBI agent. They have a surveillance program where they watch certain books to see who checks them out, like especially books like Mein Kampf and some other books.
That's funny because like I've read Mein Kampf and I have no desire to be a serial killer. I'm sure that's the case with most people who read it.
I think for the FBI, it's probably has to deal with them monitoring like white supremacist groups and militias and stuff like that.
Yeah, probably.
But and terrorists like domestic terrorists. But he explains, yeah, the FBI has a secret program, so that the guy comes back with a list of names, and I don't think it was a list of names. I think there was just one name that had checked out all those books that they had, plus some additional ones that they had not seen. So they follow up this lead to an apartment, and they're about to knock on the door, and they see somebody down the hallway with groceries in their hands, and Somerset say, hey, what's going on with this guy over here? Looking at the guy. And the guy drops his groceries and starts firing at them. So we get a giant pursuit scene, right? They're going through buildings, running through streets. I think at one point they go through someone's apartment, and the killer escapes through a window. Eventually, Mills and Somerset do split up, and it seems that Mills becomes the primary pursuant, while, Somerset's not the youngest and spryest individual, so he has to take an alternate route. So eventually, Mills runs the killer down into some alleyway. And as he's looking for him in this alleyway, he gets attacked from above. I believe the killer hits him in the head with like a crowbar or something, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And while he gets momentarily disabled, the killer picks up Mill's pistol and points it to his head.
Yeah.
Do you remember if the killer said anything to him?
I think he does. I think he said. Actually, you know what? I don't remember.
I don't think he
I don't
does
remember
either.
whether he says nothing or he says something like "I'll let you live." I don't. I think it. I think you
think he
might be
says
right.
anything.
I think maybe he says nothing, and because I remember for sure that later on he comments on that part to Mills, and he talks about it and says like, I decided to let you live, and he's talking about his whole God complex.
Yeah, because letting him live is part of his plan.
Mm-hmm.
So, such a twisted individual. So anyway, the killer does escape. Here's some fun facts for you guys. The cast that Brad Pitt wears during the movie, that is not just for show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he actually injured himself. His hand went through a car windshield and it required stitches.
Oh, wow.
The funny thing is that the cast was actually written into the script before any of this happened.
Oh,
So
that's
it was,
interesting. Wow.
yeah, so it was functional as well as part of the actual script.
Right.
So they go back to the killer's apartment, and like we said before, Brad Pitt's like, "Oh, let's kick this door down and get in there." And Somerset debates with him. He's like, "No, we don't have. Like, look at how we got the evidence to get here. Like, if anything we find now, they're just going to throw it out," and he walks free, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Mills feigns like he's resigned and is like, "Oh, okay." And he kind of turns his back, and then boom, he kicks the door open.
Exactly.
So they look through there. Well, they don't actually look through there yet, because they know the cops are going to eventually show up because there were shots fired.
Right.
So Mills asks Somerset if he has any money. So
Right.
next scene, we see like some vagrant talking to the police about witnessing the killer. And that's when we're supposed to figure out, okay, they used it to pay somebody to lie about, so they can go ahead and get into that apartment. And of course, they get into the apartment, super fucking creepy, right?
For sure.
I think the most notable accoutrement of this apartment is a glowing red crucifix.
Definitely.
I was like, man, that looks so damn evil.
I know, right? That shows you how much of this God complex he has. Like we see later on that like as Morgan Freeman's character Somerset says that he's something like a servant of God or blessed by God or something like that.
Yeah, so we do see, okay, so this guy's motives stem from Christianity. Anyone who knows anything about the seven deadly sins, how these victims and murders are taking place.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, even the first time I watched this movie, I was like, seems like he's trying to punish people for something. And
Yes.
there's some type of overall message going on here. We just don't know his full motivation yet on why he's doing all of this.
Yes.
So they look around in the apartment, saying a bunch of stuff that links the crime scenes together. So they definitely have the guy here. And they notice a photograph in the dark room, and it's a photo of Mills. And Mills like, it's like, damn it, it's the guy that's taking the pictures. It's him. He was. Then like, so the guy that tried to take a picture of them back at the Zombie Man site was actually the killer.
Yes.
So while they're at his house or apartment, they find that he is. They found no fingerprints whatsoever in this apartment, which is somewhat baffling. And also, the killer is a prolific writer. Like they
Right.
found like what 200 notebooks filled.
Were they all his were they all his diaries?
Yeah, they're all like journals because I know they read one of the journals, and it talked. He was talking about vomiting all over some guy.
Right.
So it's like, okay, this guy's kind of. He vomited on some dude, and then he just busted up laughing. That was something that he had written
Right.
on in one of his journals. Like I,
Yeah, like that's a really cool like excerpt to read because it gives you a sense of how fucking crazy he is.
well, I don't know if I would call that crazy because it's not
Well,
like he
just like
vomited on the guy on
yeah, that's a good
purpose.
point. Like it could be just like a really socially awkward thing, like autistic or something like that.
Yeah, because when I was thinking about that particular moment, I totally understood why someone could laugh at that because of the absurdity of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like he just threw up on a guy. That's kind of crazy. It's a strange. Well, if it's a stranger, you're like, oh, like most people would be extremely apologetic. He laughs, but we could see that through some of his writings is that he's completely looks down on most of everybody that he
Yeah.
talks about.
Yeah, it's interesting because like, and I've seen this happen with other serial killers in well, both in fiction and real life before. Like they're killing people from this super puritanical motivation, which I think is really interesting. Like traditional Christian values and judging people based on those is what is inspiring them to kill people because they're disgusting human beings because they're not following these biblical puritanical rules about like sexual purity and not overeating and not valuing your physical appearance or seeking riches and all of the other ones.
Yeah, so he's has this very seems like very strict code, and he sees as everyone as sinners and looks down upon everybody.
Yeah, yeah, it's
So the next,
interesting. That's like I don't know if you've seen Dexter, but it kind of reminds me of the serial killer Dexter's more strict moral code on that show that he calls the Code of Harry.
well, I don't know if I would say that the
His moral
killers is
code
less
is
strict.
arguably more positively moral, though, I would say.
Yeah,
Like he's
Dexter's code is much more moral because he
yeah,
doesn't typically kill law enforcement or good people.
yeah, like he
Um,
mostly that's part of his code, right? He mostly kills criminals who got away with murder or things like that.
yeah, like he does extensive research to make sure that the people he kills are murderers. But I
Hmm.
know, like in his, it's like a dark passenger, right? That's his, what he calls it.
That's his like serial killer persona, basically.
Yeah, I gotta check out some of the original source material. I know there were books, right?
Oh yeah,
Um,
I've actually read all of the books. This is one of those rare cases actually where I like what they did with the show more than the books.
oh,
The first book and the first season are the closest, but then
hmm,
the show and the books they kind of go in different paths, and there's some things that happen in the show that don't happen in the books and vice versa. I still
hmm,
definitely like both though. I definitely like the books and I think they're worth reading because they go in different directions, like especially the ending of the series between the books and the show are completely different, and the interactions between Dexter and some of the other characters are completely different and even almost totally reversed in some cases, which to me, like I said, I'm not getting, that's not like a complaint of mine. That's why I think both of them are worth experiencing, reading the books and watching the show, because they're like just the character of Dexter and all of the stuff that goes on with him is really fascinating to me. Like that's why he's my favorite serial killer, because it's like the only thing where for it explores the serial killer from an arguably positive moral perspective.
hmm. It's like the people who the justice system wasn't able to take care of, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something about. Oh yeah, I was gonna say
About
one of my exes um, looked like Dexter's sister.
really?
Yeah, because people would tell her all the time, "Hey, you look like Dexter's sister from that show."
Oh wow. That's pretty cool.
But anyway, getting into this stuff here. So big moment. While they're in his apartment, he calls them, basically warning them that he has to change and increase his schedule. He doesn't spend a lot of time on the phone, but he hangs up. And it's almost like we get a sense as now there's a ticking clock going on because now they know who he is, but it seems like he still has work to do. So, um, one of the things that they found in the apartment was a receipt to a leather shop. So they follow up that lead by going to the leather shop.
Oh, sorry, just to interject.
Mm,
I thought it was interesting what you said about uh, how the serial killer played by Kevin Spacey phrases his killing of people as his work, like it's his
mhm,
holy mission, as we mentioned before. But it's interesting because in a way, it's like it's like this his way of killing people in this really specific way is like his really fucked up form of artistic exploration, which I think is an interesting perspective to use to look at serial killers too. And I think the best example of that is the Hannibal TV show. The Hannibal Lecter movies are amazing too, but the TV show especially explores this idea of serial killers killing people as this fucked up way of artistic exploration.
yes, definitely. Well, they definitely get into that in the last conversations that they have before the big reveal. But so they're following up some more clues here, and they get a receipt to a leather shop. And they go in the shop. Clearly, it's like a S&M shop, and they ask the clerk there about the receipt, and the clerk gives them a picture of what the device is that he wanted to order. When they first showed this device, it wasn't clear to me what it was, so I just couldn't really figure it out what I was looking at. It becomes apparent later on what it is. I was like, huh, okay. So anyway, this I guess this leads them to like a nightclub, right? That's kind of like the next scene that they go to.
Yeah.
And once they get into this nightclub, then it's pretty seedy looking.
Yeah, it's like super. It really fits with the atmosphere, the grim, dark film noir atmosphere of the rest of the movie, and it reminds me of like the way '90s bars are portrayed in other movies, in other '90s movies,
Well, there are
or
definitely
'90s
dives that
clubs
look
at
like
least.
that.
Yeah,
Like I've been to dives that look similar to this, so I can kind of relate,
yeah,
but not many of this caliber. So they go to the nightclub. Eventually, they get to an area where it says lust on the door. So we're like, oh shit, killer struck again.
hmm
Um,
and all of that shit of revealing some details of who he was a distraction while he went and killed someone else.
yes. And there's a witness who's alive, and he's just screaming, get this thing off of me.
hmm
Um, so they take the man and the guy, I guess the guy that was running this place. It's like a S&M. I don't even know if it was a nightclub. It might have just been like a prostitution whorehouse or something like that.
Yeah, it
But
could have
they
been what do they call those? Brothels? Yeah, it could have been.
bordello,
Yeah,
brothel, one of these places.
yeah.
So I'm sorry. I don't want to get. I'm not trying to be derogatory with with sex workers. This whorehouse was the first word to come to mind. I'm not
And
giving any
I've heard like
moral.
I've heard one or two of Thaddeus Russell's podcasts of his interviews that he's done with prostitutes, where one or two of them literally call themselves whores.
Yeah, for me, like the horror thing, I guess there's two connotations. There's a connotation where if you call a woman a whore, that's like very offensive.
For sure. Yeah.
But when I think of the occupation of whore, I don't really think of it as an offensive thing.
Yeah, me neither. I
It's
think
just a different context.
prostitution should be legalized, taxed, and regulated just like all drugs. Those are the few kind of like uh anarcho, well, no, I shouldn't say that, like libertarian policies that I agree with. Although I would argue, since I'm saying they should be legalized, taxed, and regulated, that's almost more of a progressive position.
hmm So going back to the movie, we have these two characters that they're interrogating back at the station. Um, one of them is pretty calm. That's the owner. The other guy, he's like completely spazzing out. He looks like a low rent Luke Wilson or something like that. But he describes what he had to do. So he was held at gunpoint, and he had to wear the device that the killer had constructed at that S&M shop.
Right.
And then they show a picture of the device again. I was like, oh shit, that's like a strap on with a blade on it.
Yep.
So the man describes that he was forced at gunpoint to have sex with a woman using that device.
Right. Right.
And the guy is mentally broken. That guy is not going to recover from that.
Right.
So eventually, he explains that the woman died, and then the gigolo man starts spazzing out, which that's what I assume he is, like some type of gigolo. Also, not a bad connotation there. It's just a term. um, and I think uh, I have a quote
Like
here.
technically, like legally speaking, whores or prostitutes call themselves escorts usually.
Yeah, ask. Well, that's when they're trying to keep it legal, right?
Yeah,
They're trying to avoid using illegal terms to describe their profession.
yeah,
As an escort doesn't necessarily have to have sex.
yes, technically speaking, even though, like, in practice, everyone knows that that's not what that actually means.
So, having quotes here, this isn't going to have a happy ending. I'm
Of
not
course.
sure who said this, but this is a true statement for this movie. Um, we then start to, I think they're at a bar, and they start having like a philosophical conversation about why Sims is the way he is and about why he's cynical. And he says that apathy is a solution.
Right.
Um, it's a solution to survive in the city because you can't look at everything and be sympathetic. Mills is the exact opposite. And he explains that he has hope and that he cares. So he is the sympathetic character in this movie. And Somerset is the apathetic character. And that's kind of explained clearly here. And I know Mills is a bit upset about Somerset's attitude on everything. So we see that they don't agree on how they approach life in general. We have apathy with Somerset and empathy with Mills. And we kind of see that dichotomy, Mills is a family man. At least he's wanting to start a family. He has personal relationships, with the wife and whatnot. And then Somerset's just on his own. He doesn't, he's probably spends more time in his head than anything else.
Yeah.
So after that scene, we see Mills going home. He spoons with his wife and tells her he loves her. And we see Somerset at home with his metronome. But this time he picks up his metronome and he throws it, which tells me he doesn't really like the current state of his life, at least.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because Mills gets to go home with a wife, and Somerset goes home alone. We see that Somerset does get up, kind of restless, and starts throwing a switchblade at a target.
Right. And a dartboard, I think, right?
Yeah, like a dartboard. So, next scene, we get a new murder. The new murder is Pride. They arrive at a woman's house. She appears to be in bed. Her face is wrapped in bandages, and her nose is missing. And the message here is cut off her nose to spite her face. So, one of the things that we saw was in one hand, she had a phone taped to her hand. And the other hand, she had sleeping pills. So she actually got to decide her fate. And her fate was she could live disfigured or she would die pretty, I guess. I don't get what exactly happened here because she ended up dying anyway and she did get disfigured. I don't know if she had died and then he cut her up afterwards. Maybe. I don't know what the order of operations was, but I know she was given a choice to live disfigured or to die with her face intact. She ended up
Right.
dying anyways. And the message here, I guess, is that she was too proud to let her looks go. And I don't know how this target was chosen, but damn, does this seem like an innocent person getting killed?
Yeah, for sure.
At this point, we see that Somerset is staying on for the case.
Right.
And he makes that explicit. And if we haven't mentioned it already, the name of the killer is John Doe.
Right.
Literally, that's his name.
Yep.
So right after they're dealing with this murder case, they're at the station, and guess who shows up at the station?
Who is it?
It's Mr. Jonathan Doe.
Yep.
So the first thing he says is, "I'd like to speak to my lawyer, please," in his Kevin Spacey-like voice. So here's
And he shows up like covered in blood, right? Yeah.
covered in blood, and his hands are like taped up.
Yeah.
Here's one thing I'm going to mention that I thought this was really awesome regarding the promotion of this movie back in '95. Kevin Spacey was not on any of the promotional materials or billing. So nobody knew that he was in this movie until they actually watched it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
So the reason I think this is super interesting is because if Kevin Spacey's name came up in the billing, if you were going to go watch this movie, you're like, where's Kevin Spacey? Oh, he must be the killer. So since nobody knew who the killer was going to be, it was kind of a big surprise when he came on screen as the killer, because he wasn't billed, he didn't do any press for the movie, and his name doesn't show up in the opening credits.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. That must have been an awesome big reveal for people who hadn't seen the movie at the time.
Yeah, so I'm like, wow. That's something that I wish studios could do still, but knowing how arrogant stars are, they're just going to be like, I need my name here on the top billing, yada, yada, yada. But anyway, it would be interesting to see something like that happen currently these days, you know. I think that actually happened with the game that I worked on.
Did it?
Yeah, because Kevin Spacey was in the game.
Oh, that was the Call of Duty one that you worked on?
Yeah, the one that Kevin Spacey was the bad guy.
Oh, that's pretty cool. He's really good at playing a bad guy, right? He does that. He does that in like, he does that in this and The Usual Suspects and House of Cards, and I haven't played that video game, but presumably that too.
Well, he starts. You don't know he's a bad guy until like close to the end of the game.
Oh, okay. Just like The Usual Suspects.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed that he didn't show up to like the after party, like the, what do we call it? The big party we have when we finish a game. Like all the other actors came, he wasn't there. But then again, I'm thinking about it, like, oh yeah, it's probably a good idea he didn't come. Yeah. Oh man, because I met some of the other actors. And I took pictures with them and stuff too, but yeah, actors are fun people. Like they met like some of the other bad guys and like a couple of the main protagonists. Because at this point in Call of Duty, they were just using the likenesses of people. They weren't really creating a character and having to voice the character. They were just taking like people and throwing them in the games, you know. So anyway, yeah, that's the crazy, interesting thing about Kevin Spacey's billing in this movie.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that they did that.
Yeah, so after Kevin Spacey or John Doe submits himself to the authorities, they find out that he was independently wealthy, and we never find out how he got wealthy. We just know that he's kind of rich. We also find out that he
Oh
is
yeah, we don't,
well.
do we? Hmm.
No, they never tell us how he got his money. We also find out that he's well educated. They don't tell us what school he went to, but we gotta assume it's probably like maybe PhD level. I don't know. Either PhD level or he went to an Ivy League school and got a bachelor's. Who knows?
Right.
So eventually they meet with his lawyer who wants to set the terms. And the terms are that he will give a full confession if he allows the cops to be shown where the other two bodies are, presumably for the other two sins. One of the things that they found in the blood, because he was covered with blood, is they did find a third woman's blood that they could not identify.
Right.
So the cops are definitely, you know that he's killed somebody else, or at least suspects that he has. The cops don't want to deal with this guy at all, and they don't want to make deals with this guy. But the lawyer gets very political with them and says, "Hey,
Right.
how would it sound if it got out that you guys were given the opportunity to find these two people who were murdered and didn't take that opportunity
Yeah.
when the murderer said that they were going to confess?" So, and they said if they didn't take this deal, he would plead insanity. All right, so they do take the deal. We have in a dingy looking bathroom type area, we got Mills and Somerset shaving their chests. They shave their chests to place a wire. Right. So they are going to be led by John Doe to where these bodies are. Mills has a moment. That's what I wrote in my notes. He was trying to explain something and he kind of like got silent and a little choked up.
What was it?
But there was a little moment that Mills had when he was talking to Somerset in the locker room where he was about to get choked up about something.
Okay.
Well, anyway, they suit up and they take a car and they're being followed by a helicopter for some extra security. Somerset is interested in finding out who John Doe is. And he says who I am means absolutely nothing.
Right. Because he's on this mission, right?
Yeah, it's his work. It's only the only thing that's important is his work. That's
Yeah.
what he says. And he keeps telling them that because they think that it's going to be. He gets into a conversation with Mills specifically about how people never really remember these killings, and of course, there's some very famous serial killers, but a
Yeah.
lot of them do pass on in memory and aren't really become the forefront. Because there's been tons of serial killers, right? I know most of the major serial killers that we have ingrained into our psyche is because there's like movies about them, documentaries, and they
Yeah.
become household names. In the case of this, Mills is basically telling him that he's going to be nothing, nobody's going to care, nobody's going to remember. And this whole time, John Doe is saying, no, this is going to be very contrary to what you're saying. Everyone's going to remember. You're going to become famous. I'm going to become famous. And um, there's an interesting thing that happens is that Somerset tries to catch John Doe in a contradiction.
Yep.
Do you remember what it was that he asked him?
I don't remember actually.
I know it has something to do with him um, killing innocent people, or
Is it
uh,
something for?
oh no
Is
no no!
it
I remember what it
something?
was. That
Okay.
he enjoys what he does.
Yeah. Taking
Why
pride in
would the
your
Lord give him the capacity to enjoy killing when that in
Yeah.
itself is not good? And he tries to justify it, that it's just a byproduct, not something that he does because he enjoys it. It's just something as a result of the work that he do.
Right.
And I know Mills asks him, well, how can you enjoy killing innocent people? And that really sets off John Doe. And he explains that none of the people that he's killed are innocent. Um,
Yeah. So
I
that's
know.
his rationalization. It's
Yeah,
interesting
so his,
too. Sorry, go ahead.
I know his, because I understand some of the rationalizations. Um, like the biggest one would be the pederasts, which was the zombie man.
Yeah.
He
That
was
I didn't
actually
even
a
I
pretty
didn't
bad
even
person.
know I didn't even know until like relatively recently, like a few years ago, what the word pederast meant. I didn't know that it basically meant pedophile.
Yeah, basically, yeah. Someone who likes underage, who likes gets sexual gratification from underage individuals. But I guess the one justification that just didn't sit well with me was, oh yeah, he killed the woman because she was spreading disease. That's his justification for
Yeah.
killing a prostitute. It's like, okay,
How do you
you don't
know that
want.
she's spreading disease?
Yeah, exactly. And what about the dudes that are also involved? So are they not culpable, or is it
Yeah.
only the woman's fault?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so he basically gives justifications for killing all of those people. Ultimately, he is kind of close to Mill's worldview because he says that he cannot tolerate apathy,
Right.
which would be Somerset's worldview.
Yeah.
Is
Oh
that
yeah, that's a good point.
he is all about apathy,
Mm-hmm.
but John Doe is against apathy, and so is Mills. Mills doesn't accept apathy either.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying that he's tired. Well, John Doe was saying that he was tired of people being apathetic, and he had to basically do something about it.
He had to like do something that would seem totally nihilistic to most people to get people to not be apathetic.
Yeah, pretty much. So, one of the other things he says is that regarding Mills is that he said, "You're only alive because of me. I didn't kill you." That really sets Mills off.
Yeah,
Um,
because he's got like he's obviously more arrogant than Somerset is. So, like, and obviously that shows John Doe's ego or God complex and his ego a lot, right?
yeah, and another justification he uses is that he says that the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, anyone can say that. That's like that reminds me too of like in Wheel of Time when Any Aes Sedai says the wheel weaves as the wheel will.
Well,
Yeah,
that's basically the Lord works in mysterious ways.
exactly. Yeah,
Randland version.
yeah,
But eventually they do stop in a deserted area. I was like, this is California. There's no other place that I could think of that looks like this. And yes, it was, but um, it's like in a grassy desert, dry field, and there's like a dead dog, and Kevin Spacey says, "I didn't do that." So while they're out there, presumably looking for one of the bodies, a van speeds along on a little dirt path that they had traversed. Um, so Somerset breaks from what they're doing, thinking it possibly an escape attempt or something like that. And he goes and he runs out to the road and he holds the van up at gunpoint. The man comes out of the van and he says that he's only there to deliver a package. And he hands the box over to Somerset. The box is fragile. And he has the driver run all the way back on foot.
yeah.
And he leaves the box.
And he doesn't even tell him before he lets him go that he's about to radio to someone to say, have someone pick him up. So the guy, like the guy probably just assumes, oh great, I've got to walk all the way fucking back to the city now.
Yeah, so yeah, he doesn't explain that to the man running. No, not at all. So Somerset opens the box, or at least starts to open the box, and he notices that there's blood. He says that there's blood.
And I noticed this time when I was watching the movie, that's actually all they show. I totally had a false memory in my head that they showed a severed head, but they don't even show anything like that.
No.
They just leave it up to your imagination, which is brilliant filming technique, I think.
Yeah, because they didn't have to manufacture a severed head.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, your imagination can come up with something way more terrifying than anything they could show you.
Yeah. So we know as soon as he opens the box after he says, "Oh, there's blood," he opens it and immediately he says, "Stay away from here."
Yeah.
And as he's trying to explain, he definitely doesn't want Mills to approach because he knows what's in there. John Doe starts to talk to Mills.
And he's basically ignoring him.
But he's saying things until he starts saying, "I admire your pretty wife."
Yeah.
And was envious of Mills's life, and he explains that he had gone to his place and tried to pretend to be him.
Yeah.
And things didn't go the way he wanted it, so he took a souvenir. He said, "Her pretty head."
Yeah,
So as
that's
the scene gets pretty
fucking
damn
most
frantic.
shocking part of the movie.
Yeah. So it gets pretty frantic. Does I don't remember exactly what happens, but I remember, does Somerset bring the box with them, or does I know eventually, because he doesn't know. Does he ever find out what's in the box? He doesn't. He never actually looks in the box.
He doesn't?
But no,
Oh,
Brad
I
Pitt
didn't
does
know.
not look in the box. He
Oh,
does
wow, I
not look in
totally
the
forgot
box
that.
because the box is at the van,
Oh, okay.
and John Doe gets into Mill's head,
Oh, wow, yeah,
and
that's right.
he starts putting two to two together, and he asks Somerset to
What's in the
confirm
box?
what's in the box.
What's in the box?
And we get some really good acting by Brad Pitt here. Um, Excellent acting, I would say.
Definitely.
Oh, excellent acting from everybody involved. So we're talking about Morgan Freeman, Kevin Spacey, of course, and Brad Pitt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all three are phenomenally good actors.
So he's kind of confirming subtly that John Doe is telling the truth. Well, at least the reason I think he's confirming is that he wants Mills to put the gun down, and he tells Mills that if you do this, he wins.
Yep,
And he
that's what he wants.
struggles.
He
Yeah, he
wants you to kill
struggles
him.
with this for a while.
Yeah.
And then in some clever editing, we see a flash of Gwyneth Paltrow's picture.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after this happens, he walks over to John Doe and takes him out. So there's going to be a couple fun facts here. At the moment that Gwyneth Paltrow's picture, Tracy Pictures, flashes on the screen, there is exactly 7 minutes left in the movie.
Yeah.
That was done on
I
purpose.
didn't even notice that. Oh, wow. Are there other like symbolical Easter eggs like that in the movie? Do you know?
Um, because I did read an article about some of the little Easter eggs. Another one, I believe, was so there's 7 minutes. Yeah, here's the other Easter egg. Did you know when Brad Pitt shoots Kevin Spacey in the head is the only time you actually see a murder in the
No.
movie?
Oh, that's a good point, though.
It's the only time you get to see a murder is when Mills shoots Spacey in the head.
That's really, really good, powerful filmmaking because you totally get the sense of it, even though you hardly ever see it, right?
We see the aftermath, but we never see John Doe actually killing anybody.
Yeah.
One thing I forgot to mention about John Doe is we didn't really talk about, because we kind of hinted on it, is that John Doe cuts his fingertips off. That's why there were no
Yeah.
fingerprints ever
That's why he can't
anywhere.
be identified. Yeah.
Yeah, and there weren't any fingerprints in his apartment. I'm not
Right.
sure how that works exactly, but that sounds like it would be pretty painful.
I think they said that
He,
he always cuts his fingertips off.
like he shaves his skin off of his fingers.
Mm-hmm.
That seems pretty gross. Because I know when they first see him, his fingers tips are wrapped in like bandages.
Yeah.
But yeah, one here's one of the things that really set. Oh man, this is. I'm just backtracking just a little bit. One of the things that makes it super crazy, and this is one of the things that John Doe said before he got shot, that his Tracy was begging for a life and for the baby inside her.
Yeah, so that's how he finds out that his wife was fucking pregnant.
Yeah, and he didn't find out until after she was dead. That's
Yeah.
freaking crazy.
Yeah.
Jesus, this is a dark movie.
Yeah, no shit.
So he has to calculate all this stuff in his head. Not only did he kill his wife, but he killed his unborn child.
Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
calculus that he was working with.
Yeah.
And he felt that shooting John Doe in the head was appropriate.
Like it almost seems like you could almost say that it seems like it was just this elaborate scheme to to fuck over Mills, and in order to get him to execute him. Which,
well, yes, because one of the things that he told Mills, become wrath,
yeah.
which is one
Oh
of the seven
yeah.
deadly sins.
So is that his like, is Kevin Spacey supposed to be the final victim of the 7 victims then?
Yes, he's envy
Oh, okay.
because he wanted Mills' life and he wanted Mills' wife.
Oh, wow. Oh, I didn't realize that.
So
Oh,
he
that's so
became
cool.
envy and Mills became wrath, which
Oh.
completed the seven deadly sins.
Oh, that's so cool.
You didn't know that? Oh wow. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's the bad guy won the movie.
That's what I love it. I love movies when the bad guy wins. I do.
This is why Hollywood wanted to change the ending.
Yeah.
The bad guy won by
Yeah.
murdering the protagonist's wife and child.
That's why, like, I can think of so many examples of that, but that's why, like, for example, my favorite Avengers movie is Avengers Infinity War, because, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but Thanos kills half the universe.
Yeah, the bad guy wins that movie.
Yeah.
So the bad guy wins this movie, and we see Mills gets put in the cop car. He has a 1,000-yard stare. I would imagine that guy is not going to recover mentally ever.
Yeah.
He was just put in the worst situation that you could put a human being. The bad guy won, and he played off of. He manipulated Mills because Mills was an empathetic, and he used that to drive him to do what he did. If you switched it and Somerset was the person, and that happened to Somerset, I think Somerset wouldn't have killed him.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, because he had way more. We established, like, throughout the movie that he has way more emotional self-control, right?
Yeah, because there's one quote I wrote down that I had forgotten to pull up. This was actually during when the photographer shows up, and Mills gets really irate about the photographer being there. And Somerset makes a comment about that. And let me see if I can find that comment. I know I wrote it down. Yeah, he wrote a comment, and he said a comment, and the comment was, "It's impressive to see a man feeding on his emotions."
Yes, yeah, that's a good quote.
So we get a setup that Mills is this guy who acts on his emotions constantly, where Somerset is the opposite. He's just kind of set back, he's calm, the one who lacks emotion. So, yes, bad guy wins. And this last quote in the movie is pretty damn powerful as well. And it's a Ernest Hemingway quote with a twist. So here's the twist. He says, "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." And then he continues to say, "The second part is true." Meaning, Somerset doesn't think the world is a fine place, but he does believe you should fight for it.
Yeah, I really like it. I really like that last quote too. That makes a lot of sense.
For his character, for sure.
Yeah.
Kind of like the apathetic, because his whole job was fighting for that place. But throughout his whole career, he saw that the place itself was terrible, and he's always remarking on how terrible the place was. I think he once mentioned that, oh yeah, a guy got killed 2 blocks away from here and had his eyes gouged out. This is the city that we live in. You know?
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's get down to the nitty gritty here. What do you rate this movie?
I'd say like 4 or 4.5 stars out of 5.
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and give it a big goddamn 5. I think it was extremely clever, extremely unorthodox, especially back in 1995, where they were trying to get the ending changed so hard. And David Fincher, I believe, is known for demanding resignation over changes to scripts and stuff like that.
Good.
And I'm glad he stuck to his guns here. And he
Me too.
didn't go the conventional route. But man, does this movie make you feel dirty inside.
Yeah, no shit, man. Like you said in the description for this video, one of the darkest films ever made. That's definitely true.
Yeah, no happy ending. Just makes the world feel like this shitty place, or at least the setting.
Yeah.
The only bright spot in this movie gets killed. I would say like the bright spot in the movie would be Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah.
Because she's the only happy person. I'm not going to say she stays happy, but she seems happy when you first meet her in the movie.
Yeah.
But you see that the situation's different later on. But man, does this movie drag you down.
Definitely.
And I would say this is kind of a must-watch. This is not... I think everyone who loves movies should have seen this.
Definitely.
It's
iconic, especially the last part.
What's in the box?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what do you call that? Where it's iconic that the quote itself is part of our culture.
Yeah, I don't know what the word for that is.
I know there's like a term for it, but it's like when someone says what's in the box, they know what you're talking about.
You don't
have to say it with a certain inflection, but
yeah, of course.
Whenever someone says what's in the box, I usually immediately follow it with a more dramatized version.
Yeah, me too.
What's in the box?
What's in the box?
But yeah, this is a phenomenal movie. Great
Yeah,
acting, iconic, um, good Kevin Spacey stuff, even though he's kind of a weird perv.
yeah.
Uh, turns
Good,
out.
good acting and well-made film all around. And uh, David Fincher is really great at making really dark movies. That's why
Yeah, that too. What are some of his other good ones that you
Fight
could
Club,
think
of
of?
course, that's my
Well, yeah,
favorite
Fight
David
Club.
Fincher movie, and Gone Girl.
I
Um,
haven't seen it yet.
and
I need to get around to
oh,
that.
dude, it's the most horrifying movie of all time. It
Really? It's
definitely
worse
is.
than this?
It's more horrifying, I would say. Yeah, dude, we
Okay.
should do a
I didn't
movie
find
chat
Fight Club
on
horrifying, but
Fight Club. Was not
um,
horrifying, but it was definitely a fucking awesome movie.
all
And
right. Do you want to do like a Fincher thing where we do Finchers, or as Finchers are they on your list?
how about we split them up and do
I'll do
some of my.
Gone Girl and you do Fight Club.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds
Okay.
good. Both of those are fucking awesome. Gone Girl is my very close second favorite David Fincher film, and in
Is it
terms of if
Moraine in that?
sorry,
Is Moraine in that movie?
yeah, it's my favorite. It's my favorite role, by by Rosamund Pike too. It's definitely my favorite role of hers, and probably my favorite Ben Affleck role too.
Yeah, Ben Affleck's not really known for having great roles, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, both
let's
of
put
those
that on
books,
our list
both of
then.
those books are really great too. I highly recommend both of those books, and the like both authors in general, Chuck Palahniuk and Gillian Flynn are both really great authors.
Yeah, I'll have to put those books on my reading list. But let's get into what did we read? So what'd you read the past week or two?
So I know we were talking earlier about how I finished the last book in the Lightbringer series, The Burning White, which, as we were
Mm.
talking about before, I thought
I've
was.
only finished about 10 hours in.
Oh, okay, so
So
I won't give any big spoilers, but like we were saying, I think in my opinion, it's my favorite book in the series, other than the first one. I think I might still like the first one slightly more, but
mhm.
it's debatable, really. Like you were saying, there's a whole lot of info dump and a whole lot of more plot reveals and world building and really interesting character development and interactions between the different characters, and it's definitely a great one and worth reading. And I'm glad I continued on in the series and finished it, because I wasn't really that much of a big fan of the second, but even more so the third book. But the way that Brent Weeks ended the series, I know that there's that people are divided about how they ended the series, because he really specifically spelled out some things that some people would have preferred to be um, more ambiguous. But
Mhm.
I like what he did with it, so I'll be interested to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I'll probably be done with this book within a week. I mean, within the next few days.
Cool.
And I'm like, man, there's so much info getting dropped in this
Definitely,
last book.
definitely.
They're like, wow, you got to keep track of a lot more threads now. It's pretty crazy because they get into Andros's past, and then you got this prophecy going on. There's like so much stuff going on.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't keep track of all of it. Definitely.
All
Yeah.
right, what else did you read?
So I also as we were also talking about, I also read Nevernight, which I thought was, as we were talking about before, I thought it was interesting that that booktuber who we liked, Daniel Green, thought it was terrible. I thought it was an awesome book, and you liked it even more than I did. I know.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I think I was like, I wasn't really happy about Daniel Green's like assessment. Like he was just attacking the prose of the authors, like, oh, it's so
Yeah,
sophomorish and blah blah blah. It's like,
I thought
man,
he missed the point on some of his criticisms, like that one in particular, when he didn't like the writing style. I thought, man, I thought it was a brilliantly written book. I thought it was real. I really liked all of those metaphors and writing techniques.
yeah, it was a very cynical writing style. Like the
Yeah,
author, his words and metaphors are just completely filled with cynicism.
yeah, it's kind of like Joe Abercrombie in that way a little bit, right?
Yeah, just a little bit, for sure. But that book, I really liked the world that they built.
Yeah,
I really liked the idea of an assassin's Hogwarts,
yeah.
um, and like the
And
training.
there was a lot of other stuff going around on the side during that whole part too, which I liked because it wasn't just like just this straightforward plot of, hey guys, here's assassin school. There's a whole bunch of other stuff going on too.
Yeah, so like there's Nia's backstory, that she's kind of like a former noble. Uh, her whole family was murdered, and then you kind of have this plot about her abilities, um, and how her powers work, and that there's another person that she meets that has similar powers, and she's just trying to figure out because she's the only one she knows up until this point that has these powers.
Hmm.
So that definitely gets expanded in the next book. I'll get that to you when I get the chance.
Sweet.
But the ending of that first book is pretty brutal. Like there's
Definitely.
you get to see her in her prime, like in her
Yeah.
A game when she
That's
discovers what
really
she can do.
that's so
And
cool too
it's
because I didn't even realize the extent to which she was like holding back some of her powers until that point.
yeah, all I can say is that the ending is basically a bloodbath.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. And then the what is it? Because it's a religious assassins order of some sort,
Yeah,
right?
it's like a religious school. It's like a
A
church of
cult.
assassins. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a religious. It's kind of. It's not. Well, I guess you could make some parallels to Gentlemen Bastards, but
Yeah, I was thinking that a little bit too. Yeah.
but this is more like it's. Yes, well, what they do is steeped in some type of religion. But in this case, what they do in Gentlemen's Bastards, it's more about stealing. Um,
Hmm.
and this, it's more about killing. And then I thought it was interesting just seeing like the competition between students and like the different skills that they had to learn from the different teachers.
Yeah.
Like the freaking combat master is blind.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he can't see.
There were lots of cool things like that.
But yeah, they build up the world pretty interestingly. You'll get to see more of that in the second book. But I'll get that second book to you when you can. And then, yeah, one thing I forgot to mention is like, because I know it's not for everybody, but the sex scenes are super graphic. It's basically you're reading pornography.
You know what was really funny? There was
What?
I was listening to this book in a car when I was driving my mom to Edmonton, New York Big City,
Are you
and
serious?
she was napping for most of the time, but she was awake at one point when Nia started to give what's that character's name? Uh,
Trip, trick,
she
I think.
started to give him a blowjob.
Oh, it's a bit awkward.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's some pretty like pornographic level sex in this book.
yeah,
Um, and it's in the second book too. So
I don't have a
If you
problem with
can't,
it. I mean, that's
yeah, if you can't like deal with that, then the book might be difficult for you. To me, it's like, okay, it's super graphic, but let's just get. It gets. I'll say that there are some scenes in the second book that are so long. I was like, basically like droning out. Just like, okay, like get on with it already. Like I'd rather have people fighting. Um, like I don't need this much detail in like a sex scene.
I would have
I just
loved these
feel I
books when
don't.
I was a teenager.
Yeah, yeah, because I don't know, clever fighting. Like to me, the sex isn't super clever. It's just sex. Um, but when people get fighting and stuff, I like to see cleverness. You know.
Yeah. Well, everything is described extremely well, right? So,
Yeah, like he's great at describing the act of sex as well as he's good at describing fighting and everything else.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, I guess the only other book that I've read that has similar detailed sex scenes is any books from Altered Carbon world.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't read
That
those yet. That's one of many series that I want to read but haven't yet.
yeah, I think I have read all of them. Yeah, I've read all of them. But yeah,
Also,
he.
there's because it's interesting because I think I've told you this before, but it's interesting when probably one of the reasons I got so became such a bibliophile is when we were growing up, my parents like basically made my brother and I obey film ratings for the most of the time. Like we couldn't watch. Well, there were a few exceptions, but we didn't watch that many like R-rated or in the Canadian rating system, which is a little different. 18A movies
Mhm.
before we were at least close to that age, and like when we were 10 or something like that, it was hard to see like a 14A or a PG-13 movie, but they never imposed any limits on what we were allowed to read. So when I was in elementary school, I read this long, epic historical series about a woman living in Paleolithic culture. And in every one of the books, there are graphic sex scenes. And in the first book, there are multiple rape scenes.
Oh wow. And how
Yeah.
old were you read that?
I was in like, hmm, you know what? I was in grade 4, 5, or 6 because I was in a
Holy
grade 4.
crap.
Yeah, I was in a grade 4, 5, or 6 split class at the time when I was reading those books. So yeah,
Holy crap.
my
Oh
parents did a
man.
good job of explaining it to me. Like,
Why you asked about it?
yeah, I asked them about it. Like, what's all this stuff? What's all this stuff? I'm like, well, this is people who are in love who are having sex. I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. And then also, sometimes people force other people to have sex, and it's rape, and it was horrifying, wasn't it? Yeah, that can happen in real life. You don't have to read those parts if you don't want to.
Okay. Well, at least they tried to educate you instead of leaving you off and not really explaining things. But it
Yeah,
sounded like you were inquisitive about it, so.
yeah, yeah, of course. One of my
Um,
teachers did that once too. It was funny. Because my brother and I used to sneak downstairs to watch South Park at night when we weren't supposed to when we were
mhm,
kids. And so in this one episode, I heard this term beefcake from Cartman. It was
mhm.
some episode about him trying to get all jacked and stuff and drinking this protein powder called beefcake. So when we were
Mhm.
in the computer lab at school one day, I looked up beefcake and it went to a gay porn site. so my, so my teacher was a really good teacher because I didn't get in trouble for that because I just did it accidentally. And she took me into the library and explained to me what porn is. I'm like, wow, really? That's interesting.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you had access to porn on your school computers.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
That wouldn't even have showed up at my school computer. It just would have been like blocked.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they didn't have
Well,
that
maybe it
blocked.
was only straight porn that was blocked on your school websites.
Oh, this is a funny comment that's mildly related that someone just made on the stream. A
Oh,
user
what they
a
say?
user a user named Trump's father commented and said dildo in all caps.
Yes, dildo. Yeah, because I remember hearing the term dildo when I was a child and I didn't know what it was. Like the first time I heard the term dildo, I think it was one of the Naked Gun movies.
Oh, really?
And yeah, because there's a scene in Naked Gun where Frank, that's his name, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Like the main character, he's just like climbing outside of a building and he like slips and then he grabs onto like a dong of a statue and it breaks off and then later someone says something about a concrete dildo.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know that a dildo was meant to be used for pleasure. I just thought a dildo was just a dick.
Okay.
Like in the context of the movie, a dildo to me was just, oh, it's just like a penis, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Technically, yes, that's correct, but I didn't know what it was, that it had another use.
Right, right,
That it was like specifically like a sex toy. I didn't know that.
right. Since we're talking about a David Fincher movie, remember in Fight Club that part where Tyler Durden goes over to what's her name, Marla's apartment, and she has like this giant dildo on her dresser, and he just like makes the smacks the dresser and makes it wobble to make the dildo wobble around.
Yeah, I think my favorite scene in Fight Club is when they go and I think it was part of Project Mayhem where they splice in like a split second of porn into a movie.
Oh yeah, yeah, in like
It's
a
like
family
that's
movie.
freaking genius.
Yeah, I
Like
was
I'm
reading
wondering.
I was reading a book of Chuck Palahniuk essays recently, and he was talking
Uh,
about how publishers got mad at him when he was first publishing the book because they were afraid that people in real life would do these things like start fight clubs and come in people's soup and like splice porn into children's films. And he ended up like at book signings and events like that talking to a few people here and there every once in a while who really
that
did
have done
do
it.
things like tell him that they did things like start fight clubs and splice porn into children's films and come in someone's soup and shit like that.
I always thought, maybe I'll start some other YouTube channel and I'll do this whole splice thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if the algorithm would catch it, like if it
Yeah,
would
yeah, I
know.
wonder.
That's a good test, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not like I've seen, like you can go on YouTube right now and you can find tits and ass and vag.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just look up naked yoga and
Okay.
you'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, I always thought maybe of seeing that and seeing if anyone would ever catch that or not. But it'd have
Yeah.
to be a disposable channel because it'd be immediately like shut down.
Yeah, probably.
It's something I could get away with on Twitter though, because I know you could post porn on Twitter and they
Yeah.
don't really
Yeah.
care.
That's funny. Joe Rogan comments about that on that all the time. Like you can't say certain things, but you can post porn.
I think, yeah, I could do that on Twitter. I don't want any of people that know me to actually see it. So I'd have to do like a fake Twitter account or whatever.
Well, yeah, plenty of people have those.
Um, oh, okay. And we went off on tangent. What else
Yeah.
did you read?
Well, another one that we were talking about is I just finished yesterday reading Wizard's First Rule, and
Oh, you finished that. Great.
yeah, I listened to it in audiobook form, and I had read it the first time, and I have a copy of it somewhere, but I couldn't find it, so I listened to the audiobook, and yeah, we'll talk about that more here on your channel at some point in the very near future, I'm sure. But yeah, kind of I would say overall that um my reaction overall to the book was something like what I expected, but not to quite the same extent. I thought that I might possibly like it a lot less this time than I did the first time because I'm more well read in fantasy and I've heard so much I'm probably influenced by having heard so much negative feedback um
Mhm.
uh about Terry Goodkind and about Sword of Truth and Wizard's First Rule, but I thought I did think it was pretty good overall. So I didn't think it was as bad as I thought it would be. I thought it was pretty good overall. I think I gave it like 3 stars. I think the first time I read it, I probably would have given it 4 stars. So it's probably just
Mhm.
1 star less. And I saw that I saw your well, actually, I'm not sure if I read the whole thing, but I read part of your review on Goodreads and saying that you gave it like 2 stars, I think, right?
Well, originally, when I very first read it, I gave it 2, and I upgraded it to 2.5.
Okay.
Um, and that's I think I just enjoyed listening to it more than reading it. This is
That's
a long
interesting.
book.
I thought like I thought there were I thought that the voices were okay for the most part in the audiobook version, but there were a few voices that I thought were kind of ridiculous and stupid. I don't forget which one this one was that I'm thinking of, but one of them was like this really super ridiculously high pitched one that was supposed to be some sort of magical creature. And then the voice that he did
Oh,
for the
the
dragon I thought
little
was stupid too.
the dragon. Well, the dragon
Yeah,
sounded like they were from New Jersey or something like
yeah,
that.
it sounded weird. And the voice and
But
the voice of the main villain too, like it seemed like even more so towards the end of the book, he sounded like this like Russian supervillain. I'm like, why are you making him sound like some Russian supervillain? It's so
did
weird.
he sound Russian? I don't even remember. I know
He
the
sounded
main
like
guy
some sort of Middle Eastern to me at first, and then it seemed like he sounded way more Russian towards the end of the book.
who Father Rawl.
Yeah,
Hmm. I just remember him just sounding like upper class.
he does sound that way too. Yeah.
Um, yeah, that I was okay with most of it. Like I thought it was okay because it made I guess his acting chops at least made the characters seem less wooden. Because when I read them, they I felt like they were so wooden. Like the dialogue was, I don't know, sophomoric to say the least when I read it, especially like the relationship between Kaylin and Richard
Yeah, some of
seemed
the
weird.
I agree that like the behavior of some of the characters makes no sense sometimes, and a lot of the dialogue is super cheesy. I think the thing that the aspect of the book that I like the most is the world building. I thought the world building was really interesting, and they start to give you a little bit of detail about the magic systems. Those were probably my favorite aspects, and also I think like some of my favorite parts were the part where they're with the mud people, because the mud people have an
Yeah.
interesting culture, even though the fact that they're called the mud people is kind of dumb, and some of that stuff was a little campy. Um, but I also like that whole like torture section, even though I know that's like something that Daniel Green criticizes for being this weird BDSM thing, but I think it's interesting because it breaks down. It goes away from him being this like typical flawless protagonist because he becomes a fucking sex slave for a large portion of the book. So I thought that part was pretty interesting overall, even though, I mean, there were some fucking weird and nonsensical things in there too. But
Well, I'll
and
just
some of the
say
characters were
Denna.
interesting too. Like you and Tristram and I were talking about how Zed is an interesting character, but then like yeah, like some of it drags on, and there are definitely some problems that I could point out too.
Yeah, like Denna is my favorite character.
She's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, she's like extremely like the most justified bad guy. Like she's
Yeah,
technically a bad guy, but her bad guyness is almost completely 100% justified,
yeah.
which is interesting. And the thing is that she knows it. Like she's self-aware.
And that's interesting too, where she, like, we find out that she's actually kind of pretending to be more cruel to Richard than she actually reveals she actually wants to be, but then he betrays her anyway. But that's an interesting aspect of her character.
Yeah, we'll do a full, like, I'm not gonna do our usual super duper deep dives. Like, we'll go over the general flow of the story and what we thought about certain parts. I know there's some extremely derivative stuff in this book. We'll
Yeah, I
talk
know.
about that
I know.
too.
Like Daniel Green doesn't think there's a single original thing in there. I
No,
don't
there's a
know.
bunch of original
I
stuff.
think
Like,
there is, yeah. Like that whole torture thing, for example, is interesting. And I know like this thing of the people going and visiting other cultures is a super fucking common trope, but like the mud people, for example, there, even though like I said, there are a few cheesy things about them, I think the exploring that particular culture is interesting too, and the magic system and the world building, like of course they copy many aspects of other things, but I
mhm.
don't think they like it, they still are like unique things in themselves.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk about it. It's not, I think even the first time I read it, I said it's not a bad book. Like to me, a 2 star doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah,
For me, 1 star is bad.
yeah. Well,
Two
for me,
stars is like, that's what 2 stars is for me.
yeah, for
Three
me, like
stars,
for me, since I gave it 3 stars, a 3 star book, I think good enough to want to read
average.
the next one.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna read the next one for sure. Uh, 3, yeah, good enough to continue on. I think 2 for me. I think it's good enough to see what's going on with the series, at least to the next 2 books. But when I got through, I was like, yeah, super derivative, but there are some nuggets of creativity here. I
Yeah,
think, hey, this is his first book. What do you expect? You know, you got to give him a little bit of leeway for that.
yeah.
But yeah,
And
I want
apparently,
to see what's
like
going to happen.
I guess I seem to, as we talked before, agree with what appears to be the general consensus among fantasy nerds, which is that the even if you like this book, the books get progressively worse in the series. I like we talked about before. I found that when I read the first 3 books, I thought the first one was the best. Second one was okay, but not as good as the first one, and then the third one was even worse than the second one to the point that I'm like, man, this isn't fun anymore. I'm bailing.
But yeah, we'll discuss that more. I think since you're finished now, we could probably do that for our next chat.
Yeah, we can do that, and we can do
Yeah.
the next Path of Daggers one whenever you're ready too, because I'm beyond. I think I'm slightly beyond chapter 18. I read a little bit beyond that point, but still haven't finished the book because I paused on that book to read a whole bunch of other books for other book chats, and then I just got like 3 books out of the library that I had on hold too.
Yeah, I need to speed it up. I'm barely on chapter 15, I think. So I got like 4 more chapters to finish before we're ready. I think
Okay.
I could get that done in 2 weeks, hopefully. I know we could do, um, I know for our next chat, we could do Sword of Truth. And then after that, we could do, if I'm not ready, we can do the David Fincher Gone Girl.
That sounds awesome. I'm excited to see what you think about that since you haven't seen it too.
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But yeah. Was there anything else you had read?
Yeah, I'm also reading a book that's Andy Weir's newest book, who wrote The Martian, and
Hmm.
also another one after that that I forget the title of, where it takes place on the moon instead of on Mars. And this is his newest one called Project Hail Mary. And I think, oh, it's so awesome. I like it more than his other books so far. It's way more like detailed, hard science fiction, exploring these like really complex science fiction concepts. And without getting into spoilers, all I can really say is that other than like what's revealed literally in the description for the book, is that this this guy wakes up in a spaceship, doesn't remember who he is, or where he is, and finds out that he's in a different solar system and he's on a mission to save humanity. And the spaceship is fueled by this unique type of new fuel that he helped invent to be able to propel them to a different solar system. And it's super fascinating so far.
Okay. I've only watched the movie The Martian, so that's
Yeah,
the only frame of
the movie
reference I
and
have.
the movie and the book, I would say, are really closely adapted. They're, I would say, just mostly in the book. It's definitely worth reading, and part of it is because it's mostly just like more hard science fiction details in the book
Mm,
that you get, but you also get like more of a sense of the characters and that kind of thing.
mm. Okay, I'll have to. I'm always seeing that on my library, like trying to push that book onto me. So next time I see it, I'll just either put it on hold or borrow it.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely
Okay.
worth reading.
Did you have anything else?
Um, hmm. I probably read a few a few others, but I don't. Those are the only ones that I don't remember any of the other ones. That was probably most of the ones that I read this week.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, I think we've read almost because I finished Wizard's First Rule. Um, oh yeah, I finished The Moral Landscape.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
I saw that you commented, like we were talking about earlier, that you commented on my last podcast with that Derrida biography author Peter Salmon about Sam Harris's Moral Landscape.
yeah, what I don't understand is the point of the book. Like, I understand the point of the book. My only question is why. Um,
What do you
basically,
mean?
like, why spend so much time and dedication pushing this idea?
Yeah.
Um, I don't get it. It's just the problem with this book is when I listen to a book that I disagree with, it's hard for me to just sit and listen to it.
You
Because
want to take notes?
immediately in the back of my mind, I'm already thinking about counter arguments about why
Yeah.
what is being said is stupid. I
That's
don't
why
know
I
if that happens to you.
that's what I did. Why when I recently read both both with cynical theories and with Beyond Order, Jordan Peterson's new book, I just took copious notes as I was listening to both of those books, and I'm doing whole video series on both of them for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna do a video series on this. Yeah, it's interesting to entertain, but I feel the motivation for this is steeped in Sam Harris's penchant for shitting on religion.
Yeah, definitely.
Like that's the entire point of the book.
Yeah, basically. Religion
replace-
bad, science good. Science can tell you how to live your life.
Yeah, basically. The biggest problem is the metric that he espouses is this animal and human well-being, and he doesn't define what the fuck that is.
That's true.
Like,
he has this really giant, massive definition. Science can help us avoid the worst possible misery for everyone.
Yeah,
Okay,
but who gets to
what does
define
that
what
mean?
misery is? Yeah, who gets to
There's nothing
define?
worse than the most possible misery for everyone. Well, yeah, because you said so.
Yeah, and the trouble about that is who gets to define what misery is, what well-being is. It's like you can't have a scientific morality if the very basis of these things are subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Like his idea of well-being, that is subjective to whoever thinks what well-being should be. Like I'm pretty sure in more collectivist Asian societies, well-being has different metrics than somebody who lives in the United States.
Yeah.
Like I know what in the United States, like, oh, being a CEO is the ultimate pinnacle that you could reach in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So that is well-being. Like that shit is not the same in every culture.
Of course. Yeah. That's much more of like the Puritan Protestant Christian work ethic.
Yeah, so the whole thing I'm thinking when I'm listening to this book is that the view that he's espousing is specifically North American weird.
Yeah, well said.
It's not universal. It doesn't apply to everybody.
Yeah. That's explain the weird acronym for people who haven't heard it.
Oh, so Western educated, WEI?
Yep.
I forgot what
Western
I stands for.
educated, industrialized,
rich,
democratic.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just not. The problem with him is he's trying to find this universal moral objective system, and it's just kind of like a fruitless activity.
Yeah.
Like I understand him trying to do so and trying to get these justifications because he hates religious-based morality systems so much. But I can find equally horrible science-based morality systems that have occurred in history. Easiest one to point to would be the Nazis and eugenics.
Yeah, can you say
That was
eugenics
science.
and phrenology and the final solution and these things?
Yeah, those all had scientific justifications. And in the Nazi world, those were moral choices to purify the race. The people that were doing these things were thinking that they were doing those things for the greater good.
Yeah, social Darwinism, literally named after Darwinism, who came up with evolution.
Yeah, so I don't know. I see that doing this whole science-based morality can be equally bad as some of, the worst aspects of a religious-based morality, like, witch hunts and things like that have happened.
Yeah, of course.
So I think that's a problem. It's just like a black and white thing with Sam Harris. Whereas,
Yeah,
and he criticized some of my favorite thinkers. Like, I know he criticizes um, Jonathan Haidt and says that he's wrong. And I'm
yeah,
thinking, well, Jonathan Haidt, his field of study is moral psychology. He knows what he's talking about
yeah,
when analyzing humans and morality. He
yeah,
has a better grasp on that, Sam, than you
yeah.
do. And I
It's
think
funny
it's kind of
because like
obvious.
it's funny to be a militant atheist and a huge Sam Harris fan, but in more recent years, I've learned I've learned much more. What I learned from Sam Harris is mostly from the people he doesn't like and disagrees with.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where I feel that when a person is too rigid, they become less useful to society, and I kind of feel that Sam is a bit too rigid.
Yeah,
Um,
he's like way too much of a materialist rationalist.
yeah, like not everybody thinks that way. Even those economic principles have been debunked.
Yeah,
I don't know how. I know he's aware that not everybody thinks rationally, but you can't think that everyone needs to think rationally in order
yeah.
to have a happy life.
I was watching this like debate analysis of the oh well, actually, this is the oh wait, no, they were doing this analysis of, I think it was Sam Harris's conversation with, no, it was a bunch of different conversations of Sam Harris, and they were like basically trying to debunk Sam Harris, and they kind they kind of summed up his defenses for a lot of his arguments fairly well in saying that, oh, you disagree with me? You haven't thought about it hard enough. You haven't meditated enough. You haven't studied enough neuroscience.
uh, is that what he says?
Yeah,
Yeah, Sam. Yeah, Sam's a good talker, but sometimes it just doesn't absorb the totality of things, or at least try to.
yeah,
Like he has a very narrow view when it
yeah,
comes to things. Like, and it's not like, oh, there's some possibilities here. It's almost like there's only one right answer and every other answer is wrong.
yeah,
And I just don't agree to that. It's not helpful. Um, I know he's like, oh, somebody has to dissent, be a voice of dissent. I was like, yeah, but you don't have to be an asshole about
exactly. Yeah,
it. But yeah, that's what I listened to. I gave it 3 stars. I think I gave it 3 because there was some stuff in there that I was like, thought that was, oh, that's interesting. I thought his free will arguments were somewhat compelling, but I almost think that um, even if we do not have free will, is it worth thinking about? Not really.
yeah.
Like,
Like that's a good argument to like, whether we have free will or not, it doesn't really make that much difference to in terms of how we live our lives, because we like, if we do have free will, we make
mhm.
decisions. If we don't have free will, we feel like we make decisions, and the result is the same either way.
Yeah, and I also think it's not a factor of one or the other. I think it's the combination of both. Like, it's not 1-to-1. So there's a probability that you might do something, but there's not a definite yes or no that you might do or not do it.
That makes sense.
Like, hey, there might be a 60% chance that I do this. In Sam's world, it's going to be boiled down to either yes or no.
Yeah.
You're
Well, and
always going to do that in these specific circumstances. You're always going to do this. I
yeah.
don't think that's ever going to be the case ever.
Well, he's a diehard determinist too. So that kind of relates to why he, as you were saying, he basically oversimplifies situations and doesn't look at all the constantly changing, endlessly complex factors that can make the outcome a lot less certain than the way he says it is, like you were pointing out earlier.
Yeah, and also like because some people are intimidated by the word neuroscientist.
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
not.
Me neither.
All a neuroscientist does is they look at brain scans.
Yeah,
That's
and
all
they
they do.
understand them very well.
Yeah, like, oh, neuroscientist Sam Harris. When was the last time Sam Harris actually participated in neuroscience?
He's not a practicing neuroscientist. He did like 2 studies or experiments, 1 or 2.
Yeah, and what did he do? What is a neuroscientist experiment? He just looks at brain scans and tries to make determinations. It's not
Yeah,
like, oh, he knows a lot about the brain
yeah,
because neuroscience is like, no, he's just looking at scans. That's all he's doing.
right.
Uh, like he's not making really any breakthroughs. I think. What were all of his experiments done in the purpose of shitting on religion, if I'm not mistaken?
And one of them was supposedly debunking free will, because apparently, in this one study on brain scans, it was determined that you can know what decision you are going to make, like, so however many milliseconds before you make it, you can see it in your brain.
How's that debunk it? I don't know. Sammy.
This means you don't choose what you do somehow.
Yeah. The only problem is that he has somebody I found more credible also espousing that view. It was another like major scientist. What's his name? The guy that wrote Behave.
Oh, Robert Sapolsky?
Yeah, he believes that there's also no free will.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean it's an interesting argument. I personally am not really convinced by any of the 3 standard philosophical positions on it, which is that uh, there's free will, there's not free will, or you're compatibilist, which means that the world is predetermined, but you still also have free will somehow.
Yeah. Well, because there's the environment and then there's you.
Yeah,
So I don't know. It's hard.
for sure.
But yeah, did I read anything else? Yeah, well, the other stuff we kind of already covered. One thing I did read that you didn't was the second book of the Nevernight Chronicles.
Cool.
Very different from the first book. Quite different, but I'll get that to you. It definitely has some crazy twists in it that you don't really expect.
Awesome.
And it's going to be a story that you've heard told before, but slightly different.
Okay.
All right. Can you talk for about 30 seconds?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that next. that next Nevernight book. And yeah, interesting to maybe even do a book chat on one of our channels at some point about Moral Landscape or other Sam Harris works. I know his his books called Free Will and Lying are just basically just little pamphlets, like 50 pages or something like that. They're super short.
Yeah, I think if we ever did moral landscape, I think we had to give like a third voice in there.
Yeah,
At least someone who's
I was
more pro Harris.
like you suggested read Nice Wonder before, which would be a good idea, or
Either read
maybe like
Nice Wonder or Sam's Full Talk.
yeah, exactly. Well, and or like one of those people, even like along with someone who really hates Sam Harris, like my Christian friend Shane Kennedy, who's a huge Jordan Peterson fan and hates Sam Harris. That'd be interesting too.
Well, yeah, anybody who's quite religious is going to have a pretty big grudge with Sam Harris
Mm-hmm.
because he literally talks down to religious people. Like, I don't see. It's just me thinking about the feud that Hunter and Sam Harris had on Twitter.
Yeah,
Those were interesting times.
yeah, they were.
But yeah, I'm not saying I don't like Sam Harris. Like I enjoy the conversations he has with people.
Yeah, I do too.
Um,
I just listened to his newest YouTube one yesterday, and he didn't really talk about any of the stuff that I disagree with him about. He talked with Jesse Single, who's this journalist I've seen talk before about kind of like junk popular psychology, basically.
I remember Jesse Singal from the Gamergate days.
Oh, okay. I didn't remember, or I guess I didn't know that he was involved with all that.
Yeah, he was kind of against it, I think, but maybe I should check that one out.
Yeah, he's
But
been on lots of. I've seen him on a few YouTube channels at least a few times. I think he might have been on Thaddeus Russell's podcast. He might have talked to him
really?
once. He might have. I've seen him talk to at least a few other people too. I think he might have. I don't remember. He might have talked to like John McWhorter or Glenn Lowry too, or someone on that
Hmm.
Blogging Heads channel. Maybe it was Robert Wright. I'm not sure.
Okay. Lastly, it wasn't something I read, something I watched. I started Castlevania season 4.
Oh, cool. I've still only seen the first season of that. That's like one of many shows that I want to catch up on.
Season 2 is freaking amazing.
Yeah? Sweet.
You gotta go watch it.
Yeah.
The humor is great. It's super cynical show. Like the protagonist is an anti-hero, I guess. But I don't know. They just joke around a lot. So, um, yeah, you need to watch season 2, man. Season 2 is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you like that Titan Blood show, you need to get back into some Castlevania. And I think the Titan show, I can't even remember, Blood of Zeus.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
gonna have a season 2.
Oh, that's pretty
So,
cool.
and Wheel of Time, they're already they haven't even premiered the show, and season 2 is already a go.
I saw in Daniel Green's last fantasy news that they've completed filming season 1 of Wheel of Time.
Yeah, so they're just
And
gonna. I can't wait.
of course the Lord of the Rings show is going to come out fairly soon too. That's interesting because apparently they're going to incorporate and like make the story mostly about more of the backstory, like the Silmarillion type stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering what they're gonna do because they can't really rehash the main books. Like they've done that in probably the best way that they've done it with through the movies. Like the movies did a pretty good job covering the books. Um, so I guess what they would have either have to go and create some original stories, and there have been original stories created. The Mordor video games. Have you heard of those?
Like Shadow of Mordor. I know you've talked to me
Yeah,
about that one before.
yeah, those are original stories. Those are stories, and some of the characters in the game are characters from the original stories.
Okay.
So I know the game takes place like 900 years before Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
So it's if you're into Lord of the Rings, I'd say yeah, check it out for the story. There's probably videos that cover all of the story of the game. The
Yeah.
game would take you a while to play through it and get all those bits, but you could probably get all of that on YouTube if you wanted
Yeah.
to learn what the
Based on what
story
I've
of the
heard
game
about it,
is.
it sounds like a pretty awesome game.
Oh yeah, it's a fun game. I've beat the first one. I don't have the second one. I'll probably beat it eventually. I'll
Right.
acquire it eventually and beat it. But yeah, I recommend it. It's a fun game if you're into those types of games.
Right.
But yeah, I'm excited for Wheel of Time. I'm glad that they finished filming. I can't believe that there's no like legitimate trailers for this yet.
Yeah.
Like
I've
we've
been
only
been hearing
seen,
like fantasy nerds talk about it for over a year at least.
yeah, I it's been like 2 years for me, almost three, because I know when I started doing my before I even started doing the reread of Wheel of Time, I knew they were working on this. It's been a while. I know we've been working on this Wheel of Time stuff for a while, so
Yeah.
um, they haven't announced it yet, really, have they? They haven't said, "Oh, it's going to be out by this date." I'm hoping that it's going to be out this year.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I can't imagine it wouldn't be unless they have a shitload of editing to do and
Yeah.
special effects. But we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah,
So I'm
hopefully.
excited, but I'm also bracing myself because I know it could suck. It possibly. I'm
Right.
hoping it doesn't, but I know that there's a possibility that it could. Hey, they got like a good ensemble of writers, so we'll see how that works.
Right.
That's we'll see if they're doing it because what Agents of Shield. I thought the show was okay for the first 2 or 3 seasons. So if it's as good as that, should be fine. Um, and I think one of the other writers wrote for Gotham.
Oh, okay.
So, and I
I
like
like
Gotham.
I like that's one that I haven't seen Agents of Shield, but I liked the first season of Gotham, but then kind of bailed. Well, I kind of liked the first season of Gotham, but bailed at the end of it because it got progressively worse to me.
I forgot what happens at the end of the first season.
I don't really remember either.
The only thing I remember is that his girlfriend, something happens to her.
Yeah,
And
something like that. I think she gets killed or kidnapped, or I
after
don't remember.
something, I don't remember.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, I don't know. I'll revisit it sometime.
yeah.
But I think I finished the second season, so I think I'm on season 3 of Gotham. We'll see. But yeah, go watch Castlevania. This fourth season is the final season for this storyline. And from what I've been told, they will make another Castlevania, but it's going to have different characters. So if you don't know anything of this game series, Castlevania, God damn, there's so many different Castlevania games.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's a timeline. So Castlevania, I believe the earliest in the timeline is like 1200
Okay.
AD, and then it goes all the way up to present time. So, and there's probably a dozen different stories in between then. So there's 4 seasons of Castlevania is based off of, I would say, 1.5 games. And there's like a dozen Castlevania games. So we'll see. And there's Alucard is a reoccurring character in many of the different series. So who knows if we'll see him pop up again.
And who's that again?
Alucard is Dracula's son.
Oh, okay. Because
The
the
guy with
first
blonde
season was all
hair.
about killing Dracula.
Well, yeah, but at the end of season 1, you meet Dracula's son.
Right, right.
Um, he's the last. He's in multiple different Castlevania series. Trevor is only in Castlevania 3. So this game is basically Castlevania 3 and a little bit of Castlevania. I forgot the title of it, but it's based off of two of the other characters that get introduced in the second season, if you get to the second season.
Oh, okay.
I'd say check it out, man. I think you'd really love second season.
Yeah, it sounds that way.
I believe second season's better than first season. So if you like the first season, you'll definitely like season 2. Season 3 it's okay. It's not horrible. It's okay. It's just it's a little slower moving. And right now I'm on season 4, which so far is moving pretty quickly. So we'll see. But I definitely think you should at least get to season 2 and finish it.
Oh yeah, I plan to watch the whole series as long as I like it. I love the first one.
Well, the first is only 4 episodes.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
and, and I believe season 2 is 8 or 10. I'm not sure. It's either 8 or 10.
Okay. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So and they're 30 minutes an episode. So you can watch like 4 episodes in one sitting.
Right.
So yeah, well that's it. That's all I read this week. And next week we will do Wizard's first rule, which is
Yep.
people are stupid.
Yep.
Yeah, so Wizard's first rule, that's what we're going to talk about next week.
Sounds
Was there
good.
anything you had to plug there, Andrew?
Yeah, if people want to, they can check out my YouTube channel, which is Mindgasms, where, as I mentioned before, the last one did an awesome podcast with an author of a biography on the French post-structuralist philosopher Derrida, with the author of that biography, Peter Salmon, about how about his article called "How Derrida and Foucault Became the Most Misunderstood Philosophers of Our Time," and we talk about what is basically one of my hobby horses on my channel, which is talking about how public intellectuals like Jordan Peterson and members of the intellectual dark web uh, get their criticisms of thinkers like Foucault and Derrida wrong all the time, and how they actually didn't even like each other and disagreed with each other a lot, and they were not relativists, and they were not even postmodernists. And it's pretty clear if you actually read the work of these thinkers that often a lot of the claims that people in the IDW make are actually the opposite of what these authors explicitly wrote in their works. And they made a lot of good points too. And we're probably going to do some other philosophy deep dive discussions too, about like Hegel, for example, or I was thinking Husserl and phenomenology for those philosophy nerds out there who I know some of you watch my channel. And yeah, obviously tomorrow, of course, too, Dusty and Parker and I, we're going to talk about um, The Gunslinger, which is book 1 in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King, the like fantasy horror western series, which is pretty awesome. And yeah, people can check out my blog too if they want to, which is at mindgasms.bplifetime.com. And then Dusty's got my Twitter link there in the description of the video there I saw, and my Instagram is Andrew Mindgasms, and people can check out my Patreon at Mindgasms if they want to also. And yeah, that's all my stuff there.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week, sometime on Saturday. And tomorrow, check out Andrew's channel where we're going to talk about The Gunslinger, Book 1 in the Dark Tower trilogy. Very weird book, and we'll talk about it. I thought it was weird.
I thought it was weird and awesome.
Yeah, it's weird and awesome at the same time. But yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow, and then next week we'll talk about the controversial author Terry Goodkind and his uncontroversial book, The Wizard's First Rule.
Oh yeah, not controversial at all.
No, that's not. Well, I guess. Well, it would have been controversial maybe if it was written like in the early '80s, but I was like, oh, this is written in '95. This isn't controversial. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, in the early '80s, you're thinking, whoa, dominatrix. Oh man, this is super racy. What's going on here? But no, this is '95. Like,
yeah, exactly.
People knew about dominatrixes. They weren't a big deal back in '95. Which is probably the most racy thing or controversial thing about Wizard's First Rule. But as we'll see tomorrow, I think it's actually one of the better parts of the book. But we'll talk about that next week on Saturday.
Yeah.
Not tomorrow, next week on Saturday.
Yeah.
All right. So, yes, we're going to be signing off. Join us next week, and you have a great night, everybody.
All right. Adios until next time, everyone.